Good evening. Mass counter-terrorism raids across Melbourne have foiled an alleged suicide plot, the biggest in Australia's history. Here's what we know so far. 400 police were involved, raiding 19 homes across Melbourne and Colac. 5 men have been arrested, with one charged over an alleged suicide mission targeting Sydney's Holsworthy Army base. Police believe the terrorist plot was connected to an organisation based in Somalia. Peter Morris was there as the raids took place this morning. Peter, police were taking no chances. This was a massive response.
It was indeed, Mitch, and it would appear one entirely appropriate given the information that was gleaned throughout the course of this investigation. I can tell you firsthand that police that were out in the field early this morning were well prepared to deal with anything that may have confronted them. Now, 4 of the 5 men that were arrested, the suspects, have appeared here in the Melbourne Magistrates Court this afternoon. One man has been charged, remanded in custody on terrorism-related offences. Police have been granted extra time, an extra 8 hours to interview the other 3 suspects. Now, nonetheless, and all that aside, it has been a tumultuous day for both state and federal officers, and here's how we saw it unfold.
The preparation was meticulous. Months of secret intelligence warning police they should be ready for anything. And they were.
Well, potentially this would have been, if it had been able to be carried out, the most serious terrorist attack on Australian soil.
Federal agents, force response officers and Special Operations Group police turned out in their droves for what was to be Australia's second biggest counter-terrorism operation.
Today's operation, codenamed Operation Neath, involved approximately 400 officers from the Australian Federal Police, the Victoria Police and the New South Wales Police.
This is a sober reminder that the threat of terrorism to Australia continues.
Those living at 19 different addresses received a rude awakening just before 4 this morning. Raid teams using the cover of darkness to enter suburban streets undetected before surprising their targets. The simultaneous raids occurred on homes in Glenroy, Carlton, Meadow Heights, Roxburgh Park, Broadmeadows, West Meadows, Preston, Epping and States West. Nayef disbelief.
I think it's going to be a shock for everyone when they wake up and realise what's happening just down the road.
Freaked out a little bit. I had a few phone calls and I'm like, it's a bit early for phone calls, but and there's a whole bunch of people at the front.
They only moved in probably start of this year, kept to themselves, didn't really hear nothing from them.
You hear about it, but you don't think that it's going to happen, you know, in your area.
Both federal and state police say today's raids are the culmination of more than 7 months of hard work after the FBI raised concerns back in January about intelligence it had gathered on the alleged plot.
The search warrants are the result of a 7-month joint investigation which commenced after law enforcement and intelligence agencies identified a potential threat to Australia's national security.
In an hour of the raids, 5 men, all Australian citizens, at targets of the joint operation, had been placed under arrest and were soon back at Federal Police headquarters where they were to undergo formal questioning. Heavy security also surrounded a car which had been seized by federal agents. The allegations are frightening. The target, Sydney's Holsworthy Army base.
The men's intention was to actually go into these to the army barracks and to kill as many soldiers as they could before themselves they were killed.
The undercover operation claims the group was in the advanced stages of its planning and had already carried out detailed surveillance on the army base.
I think it's sufficient to say that we got to a point where we were satisfied that it was appropriate for us to act, and that's what we did.
The fact that this effort was so well coordinated today, I think, has ensured that our state and our nation will be safe from terrorism activity.
This requires continued vigilance on the part of our security authorities.
Despite the seriousness of the allegations, police moved quickly to reassure the public that our community is safe.
I do want to provide a reassurance to the Victorian community and the Australian community that we obviously take these matters very seriously. We work tirelessly with all enforcers across Australia and, if need be, internationally.
By this afternoon, those accused of being part of the group had begun appearing in the Melbourne Magistrates Court. And even though today's arrests will see a lengthy court sequel, police say their operation is far from others likely to be questioned in coming weeks. Peter Morris, 7 News.
And it's also emerged that surveillance had already been carried out on other possible targets that authorities are reluctant to reveal. Reporter Norm Beeman is outside Watsonia Army Camp. Norm, what's the security like there tonight?
Well, Peter, security here at this army base and at Defence Headquarters in St Kilda Road has not been beefed up since this morning's raids. And what we've learned through this exercise is that the protection of these bases is not done by soldiers, but is outsourced to private security firms. Just hours after being named as a target, the Army's Counter-Terrorism Nerve Centre near Sydney was announcing a training exercise. Black Hawks will buzz suburban Sydney, just like they did over Melbourne earlier this year. But Holsworthy base itself isn't taking any extra precautions.
We always take to make sure that we maintain the security at our bases.
Like other Australian bases, it remains at the second lowest security level, Safe Base Bravo. What's more, most Australian bases rely on unarmed private security guards.
The physical cost of, say, protecting everything to the standard of the Berlin Wall is just beyond what the Australian people can afford. The
terrorist scare has raised security concerns at army bases here in Melbourne, and there's questions about just how they are protected. Today, 7 News watched as people and vehicles came and left from Army Headquarters Melbourne, Victoria Barracks. Security guards didn't check under vehicles with mirrors for possible terrorist bombs, nor the bags and briefcases of those entering. How do you feel that Australian Army bases were targeted?
I don't feel overly worried about it.
No better than that. And no comment either from authorities on other possible targets in Victoria.
There had also been some suspicious activity around other bases which we're not prepared to divulge at this stage.
But recent attacks overseas show terrorists prefer soft targets like international hotels and in one case a police academy in Pakistan.
You're never going to be able to prevent fanatics carrying out an attack in an open democratic society like Australia. Even if you secure the military base, they'll just go and attack the school next door.
Those men arrested today are allegedly linked to AlShabab in Somalia, a terrorist group aligned with pirates.
It's got known links with Al-Qaeda. It's a very serious organisation, has a lot of people who have extensive war experience.
And why the Holsworthy base?
Military barracks were a legitimate target because of Australia's involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan.
Norm Beeman, 7 News.
And the ripple effect from today's raids continues. Now Somalian leaders here fear a vicious backlash from the wider community. Nick McCallum has the story.
Among Victoria's 10,000-strong Somalian community, a sense of shock.
I never seen any fanatic people in Melbourne.
It was a disbelief. Couldn't believe my ears.
Community leader Abdurrahman Osman is concerned about a backlash from the wider community.
I don't want my people to be had by one single person or 2 or 3 who are doing this terrorist act. We are against terrorist acts.
Police claim a terror group recruited young Somali men here. That's news to 28-year-old Omar.
If this thing is really true, then I think it's going to damage, the Somali people in Australia, big time.
Former Sydney cleric Hersey Haloli claimed he warned about this 2 years ago, but was ignored by the government.
My suspicion was that young Somali Muslims could be used in the future to carry some terrorist activities in Australia.
It's rumoured some of those arrested are cabbies. The Victorian Taxi Directorate says it does background checks on drivers.
It worries me because it's my community. I worry about these things here.
The Premier appealed for calm.
I don't think this reflects on any particular communities.
Melbourne's most senior Somali cleric is optimistic. He expects some pressure, but no backlash.
To the extent that the community gets hurt, no, I don't think that. Australians are more mature than that.
Somalian community leaders will meet police tomorrow with this vow.
I will promise to the Australian community that we will fight together against anyone, any terrorist act in this country.
Nick McCallum, 7 News.
Now to Mike Amor in our US bureau. And Mike, all this can be linked to the civil war in Somalia.
Peter, the AlShabab group that the men arrested today allegedly belong to is a militant Islamic organisation. It controls large parts of Somalia and has strong ties to Al-Qaeda. Although AlShabab is not a listed terrorist organisation in Australia, it is here in America. They call themselves AlShabab, meaning the boys. But this training video isn't child's play. The group's brought havoc and destruction to its own country, controlling large parts of Somalia, killing hundreds and forcing thousands more to flee. They're determined to spread their reign of terror.
So the only reason we're staying here, away from our families, away from the cities, away from, ICE, candy bars, all these other things, is because we're waiting to meet with the enemy.
He calls himself Abu Mansour al-Mariki, the American, and leads a band of foreign fighters linked to Al-Qaeda, training young Somalis to become terrorists.
We're calling all the brothers overseas.
A rap-style video lures recruits.
Bomb by bomb, blast by blast.
It's working. Dozens of young men with Somali backgrounds have gone missing and returning to their homeland to fight.
4 of those guys left here are dead.
When the FBI discovered Somalis becoming radicalised, it alerted Australia. In the recruiting video, al-Mariki boasts of plans to ambush a UN convoy.
Try to blow up as many of their vehicles as we can and kill as many of them as we can and take everything they got, honey, mashallah.
It failed, but Al-Shabaab hopes young fighters will take terrorist skills back to their adopted countries. In the United States, Mike Amor, 7 News.